So this is the first domain that we're going to look at, and you have identified that you've scored quite, or your observations of your ex have scored quite high in these particular areas. And this is around stress integration, and ultimately, how can you show this to the court in terms of the impact, not just on the process, but also on you and on the children, and therefore communicate that into risk. So let's have a look at what it means. So your ex unravels during court dates, they violate parenting plans during stressful moments, and they can escalate when situations become intense. And that is the stress integration in action. And it's just one of those four shadow domains. And this is going to help us to make predictions. So understanding this domain helps you to document evidence that will shift the professional's perception. Now, other people won't necessarily understand it to the depth that you do, but when you learn how to document, what to document, then they'll be able to see that their behaviour is unpredictable and harmful, and it can show a pattern of harmful behaviour. And it also shows future functioning of them as a co-parent and what custody arrangements might look like with someone who struggles in this particular domain. So what is stress integration? So it refers to how someone processes and responds to pressure without escalating or destabilizing. It measures the capacity to remain functional under normal life stresses. So when someone scores high on this domain, which you've observed that your ex does, their nervous system becomes stuck in threat detection mode. Normal pressure triggers disproportionate responses, and stress leads to retaliation or rule breaking. And this is important for court because they want to see how your ex can handle pressure, and actually they can fake it. So we want to almost poke the bear, really, and push those stress buttons, because this will help predict that. When you're able to predict and show that you can predict that escalation, it proves that you're telling the truth and it boosts your credibility. So a normal stress response is you feel the pressure, you manage it, you move forward. It might be uncomfortable, but you can function, and you use appropriate coping strategies, and you comply with all your obligations, including parenting and court. But poor stress integration, they feel the pressure, but their nervous system takes over. This leads to an escalation cycle, and then worse consequences for them, which adds on more stress, just keeping them locked in this feedback loop, and that will worsen with each court appearance. And they're unable to break the pattern despite negative outcomes. So no matter how bad it looks, they just don't seem to be able to change it. And to be honest, you might notice that in yourself. And so I want to be clear, none of this is about pathologizing or blaming, or, this is about the psychology and how you can use it to understand and build your case. But obviously, if you do recognize yourself in that, there is support for your nervous system. That's where you start, because this is where the problem occurs, is your nervous system hijacked. So there's tools on the website, but also we can work with a professional. If you look at the Nurturing Coach, we offer support and counselling, but work on your nervous system so that it doesn't get hijacked. So it will manifest in family court before court dates. So there might be sudden rule violations, missed handovers, or payment failures. They might increase their communication, become more aggressive, or create mini crises. There'll be false allegations filed just before proceedings, or that you might find out that they've started, or you suspect that they've started using harmful substances or introduced some other harmful coping behaviours to cope with the stress. During court, they're going to struggle in mediation because it's going to be uncomfortable for them. And there might be outbursts at minor issues. There will be emotional volatility during those hearings. They can threaten retaliation with statements like, you'll see what happens, or let's see what happens. They make contradictory statements, admitting things and then immediately denying them. And then After, if they receive an unfavourable outcome, then there will be a massive escalation afterwards. They will violate the order within days or weeks. They'll file appeals or complaints compulsively. They'll even retaliate against the children, doubling down on their own harmful behaviour, and repeat the same litigation strategy, even though it failed previously. And so once you're able to show this pattern and it's recurring over and over, then professionals can start to see the level of understanding that you have and also the experience that the children are having. And you're showing that this isn't a one-off issue. This is a pattern of poor stress management. So I'm not going to go into detail on this. I'll leave it on the screen for a while, but obviously it's all in the brain. The nervous system is stuck in that high alert mode, or equally, like I say, it could be yours, and that's fine. You might both be struggling with this. If you've got complex PTSD, the stress part is going to be affected here. So have a read through this, and like I say, you can get support for your nervous system. There are some as well, though, particularly within this, and as we look at the other domains, this will come into play. Actually, they quite enjoy the drama. They feel that they benefit from them because they get attention and purpose, and it almost gives them a sense of familiarity and stability, and that reminds them of what they've experienced in their childhood. And so it can be almost comforting to be in that stressed place, even though it's also uncomfortable at the same time. So each escalation will justify their own victim narrative and the court involvement, and this will all in their own mind confirm that they are being attacked. What it means is that essentially court isn't going to make this any better. It is not going to improve things for them. This is something that they've got to fix in therapy and in treatment models. And again, just to say, knowing this doesn't diminish their responsibility and accountability, which I'm just putting it in there to help know that this is what's going on. But let's look at how this is impacting. So strategic positioning. This is what's going to happen. So there'll be non-compliance. You'll be able to predict that they won't comply with court orders. There'll be escalation patterns that you can show, a level of untrustworthiness, those contradictions, and the risk to the children of them not being able to cope with stress and ongoing litigation. They're not going to back down. They're going to keep going over and over again. So by being able to show this pattern, and if you were interested, I do a in-depth report for you. If you look at our strategy reports, which I will link in the email, that will show you and provide you with frameworks like spreadsheets on how to document these behaviours. But being able to do so shows the pattern, that it isn't a one-off, and it boosts your credibility. So this is essentially the 3-layer documentation. So layer 1 is the escalation cycle. So showing what happened, the stressor, I call this an ABC. So the stressor is the A, the behavior is the B, the C is the consequence. And we can also add how they respond to that escalation rather than de-escalating it. Layer 2 is documenting what goes on before, during, and after. Layer 3 is linking all of this to what the children are experiencing, what they've seen, what they're going to, in the future, what they're going to see, the cost, financial, emotional, and logistical of each one of these cycles. And anytime that the children have witnessed it and made statements about it, this is how you link it all together. So practical documentation tools are communication records, incident logs, pattern documentation, and professional observation. So again, as I've said, I can help with these things if it's something that you want help with. Important what not to do is don't diagnose or pathologize. So don't use terms like narcissist or even it's their trauma, because that's not your job. Your job isn't to tell them what's going on underneath. You are there just to show the problem. Don't speculate about their intent either. You can't. That again will undermine your credibility if you look like you're mind reading. Even though you probably do know what they're doing and why they're doing it, you can't say that to the court. Keep your personal feelings and judgments out of documentation And don't just stick to facts. Don't embellish or use dramatic language. So describe specific behaviours, connect the pattern to the outcome, let the facts speak, stay neutral and factual, and include dates and times. This all adds to your credibility. And this is how this will all impact. So they'll start to recognise this pattern and know that it's not situational. This is part of their personality. Ineffectiveness of incentive. So they'll learn that nothing the court does is going to change this, because this is how they respond to stress and when they're dysregulated. And this means that they've got a self-regulation deficit. And that's a huge factor for the children, because for children to learn how to regulate, they need a parent who knows how to regulate, self-regulate. And then that's the predictive valve. So if they've escalated 6 times, they'll escalate again. And therefore you need structural protection in terms of court orders, safeguarding, and contact, all that kind of thing. And this is why it helps, because you're showing a clear pattern. As we link all these 4 domains together, it will become a very powerful way of presenting your evidence. So this gives you a strategic advantage, because it shifts the perception from it's 2 conflicted parents, i.e. a high conflict situation, to 1 parent with poor stress management. It supports protective orders. They'll be able to see how the risk that comes with them struggling with stress. It will counter their narrative, because obviously they claim you're the problem, but this shows that actually their escalation happens regardless of who's doing or where the stress is coming from. It will predict future behaviour. So the court will feel confident knowing that they've done their due diligence on this. They've got a proven pattern. And obviously it will protect children from that unpredictable escalation. And that's the aim. So the bottom line is that your documentation creates the protection. And like I said, if you want help with this, if you would like me to create those for you based on a very in-depth profile that, again, I will create, which is sort of minimum 50-page in-depth psychological assessment, not a psychological assessment as in what you pay an expert to do, but based on factors from their profile, we also look at the type of narcissist, so some of those behaviours, and then we'll pull it all together to really be able to drill down into exactly how they're going to show up, exactly the behaviours that they're going to present, exactly when they're going to escalate, what allegations they will make. Then have a look at our strategy reports. I will link that in the videos and in the email, sorry. And next time we'll look at the next domain, which will go even deeper on this. I hope that's been useful. I'd love to hear your feedback. Take care.